I'm a very character-driven writer, so that quite literally I have. It sounds going to sort of sound somewhat psychotic, but I have voices that come into my brain. On my book, Sing to the Stars, I actually woke up in the middle of the night hearing the voice of Ephraim, who told me his story in his voice, his actual voice. And I was a playground supervisor for years in Cleveland growing up, and the rhythms of my neighborhood kids in Cleveland, the kids that I worked with every year, just kind of flowed through me. I do somehow have an ear for dialect that I was not trained for, have no idea how it happened. It's one of those gifts that you don't question because it could be dangerous if you start to question it. I think that what we traditionally call trade books as opposed to textbooks work well in the classroom for a variety of reasons. One of the reasons they work well is you're talking about magical language. In the books that I write, how a word sounds on a page is very important to me, and I actually read my text out loud as I write continually, and I look for a rhythm in the words. I look for a sense and structure that sometimes has short sentences, sometimes has crisp sentences. When I started Sing to the Stars, excuse me, when I began Sing to the Stars, I wanted to build in the music of the city. So I have a lot of rhythm in the language that goes boom, 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 or picks up the rhythm. And because it was a book about music, I wanted to incorporate that music in there. So I have an interdisciplinary approach to the way I write. I am an illustrator and a writer, and all of those things come into the book. And if I were taking Sing to the Stars in the classroom or other books in the classroom, I would look at what, as a teacher, what resonates with me in that literature, what I am reacting to. When a teacher looks at a book and they see what resonates with them in the book, then think about what you're trying to cover in a class. For example, in the book that I wrote, Sing to the Stars, there is an emotional content to the book where a child is actually challenging an adult to fulfill their dream instead of living vicariously through their experience. So that could be an open-ended discussion about feelings, about intergenerational relationships. And if you look at Sing to the Stars, it's set in a city. And I know that many teachers have that live out in farm areas in the West, or even in rural Ohio where I grew up. They use it to teach kids about what it's like to grow up in a city, that when you live in an apartment building, you're constantly aware of the noises that are around you. In another sense, you could do the book to use it about music appreciation, because I bring in allusions to jazz musicians in New York City, and both main characters are musicians, a young musician with a gift and an older musician who has had a tragedy in his life where he's abandoned his gift. And the story is really about this young boy challenging his friend, who is older than he is, to sort of resurrect that gift. And I think it's to talk to kids about any book. There are so many ways that you can relate it in the classroom. I think the obvious ones I kind of don't want to get into. If a history book, you're going to use it in a history classroom. I have an experience of working with the Hole in the Wall Gang camp in Connecticut for many, many years. It's a camp for kids with cancer and sickle cell anemia. And I went in thinking, I'll bring in books about sickle cell anemia and cancer, and that was a losing proposition. But when I brought books in like Gilly Hopkins that Catherine Patterson wrote, when I brought in books, even sports challenge books, where there is a hero or heroine that overcomes challenges, kids could vicariously live through that experience, and they wanted to escape their reality, but they also wanted to be inspired. And I think that beyond the obvious uses of books in a classroom, there's so much that could be used with literature to talk about leadership, to talk about what it is to be a hero or a heroine.